All right, so we are going to go ahead and get started. Welcome to the fish dissection. Oh, not the fish dissection, the turtle takeover, sorry. My name is Ipsita, and I am a public programs intern for UGA Marine Extension and Georgia Sea Grant. We conduct research, education, and outreach for healthy coastal ecosystems and communities. So, let's get started. First thing, does anyone know anything about turtles? This is just an open-ended question to help get your brain fired up, and you can answer in the chat, like, what do you know about turtles? And while people are answering in the chat, we're gonna start a poll, and you're gonna want to find the turtle in this slide. Is it the first picture, the second picture, or the third picture? And you see that poll popping up with a green header. If you are on a computer, you can move the poll around to try and help see the pictures if it's covering up the slide. All right, so we're getting a ton of responses. Thank you to everyone who's participating. And keep thinking about what do you know about turtles and try using that to figure out where the turtle is in this picture. All right, so we're gonna end the poll soon as we have most of our people responding, and we're gonna share the results. And you guys did awesome. Yeah, it is picture one. But why is it picture one? All right, so picture 3, we have a whelk. And a whelk has a shell like a turtle, but it doesn't have a backbone. In picture 2, we have a fish. Now, the fish does have a backbone like the turtle, but it has gills, while turtles, on the other hand, have lungs. And so our first picture, like all of you got right, is a turtle. The turtle has lungs, turtles have scales, they have a shell, and they have 4 limbs, which, depending on whether it's terrestrial, aquatic, or a sea turtle, it'll have flippers or legs. All right, so another poll is gonna come up. Think about what we talked about in the last slide, and I want you to try and find the turtle. All right, so we have a bunch of responses coming in. Thank you guys so much. And we're gonna end the poll in maybe about 10 more seconds. Oh, or now. And we're gonna share the results. And you guys did amazing. Or we can restart. Okay. So just answer that one more time on which one's a turtle. Now remember what we talked about last time, and if you do remember what we talked about last time, just type it in the chat box. And we're gonna end the poll in about 7 seconds. All right, and you guys did amazing. All of you guessed it correctly. It's picture number 1 again. So what do we have here? Now our third picture is a frog. A frog has lungs like a turtle, but it doesn't have scales. And additionally, frogs have squishy jelly eggs. Alligator is the second picture. Now these alligators do have scales, but they don't have a shell like the turtle. And the first one is a frog. The first one's a turtle. And why is it a turtle? Well, it has lungs, it has scales, it has a shell, and it has 4 limbs. All right, and now our next slide, we're gonna go ahead and look at the types of turtles. Now, first we have land or terrestrial turtles. They might go in the water, but most of their time is on land. Now, aquatic turtles spend most of their time in the water, though they will come up to land, such as on logs to soak in the sun. Now, usually this is to regulate their body temperature, to move to a new area, or to lay eggs. Sea turtles live the majority of their life in the water, but the females will come up onto land to lay eggs. Interestingly, sea turtles still have lungs, so they come up to the surface often to breathe in air. And so as you can see, all of these still have the main characteristics of a turtle, but they're just a little different. And now, at this time, I'd like to hand it over to Kayla to look at some live animals.
I am so sorry. I was muted there. Thanks for your patience as we navigate new technology this summer. My name is Kayla Clark, and I coordinate the public programs here, and also get to teach with some of our ambassador animals, including our reptiles and the turtles. So I'm going to flip my camera around. Before we see the live turtles, I wanted to show a few things that Sita talked about. She talked about turtles having a backbone. So this is an example of a loggerhead sea turtle shell. You can see next to it is a meter stick. So this shell is almost 3 feet tall, really big shell. And if we zoom in close, you can see there's the backbone right there built into the shell. So if you ever wondered if a turtle can leave its shell, it can't because the shell is actually part of its body. And if you look closely, all of this area in here, these are the rib bones. So this is an example of a rib bone here from a sea turtle. So those rib bones fuse together to make the shell. And they also have other bones in their body as well. So this is an example from a leatherback sea turtle, a bone from the flipper. And does anyone have a guess? This item right here, it does come from a sea turtle. Anyone know what that might be? You can type your guesses in the chat box at this time. And while you're doing that, I'm going to show you some of the eggs. So unlike an amphibian, like a frog, which has jelly eggs, the sea turtles and turtles in general are going to have more leathery eggs, like these ones. And Sita, did we have any guesses about what this object was?
We did. So one person said it was a shell and another person asked if it were a rib.
Those are both fantastic guesses. So it is part of the shell. This is actually a scale. So all reptiles have scales, and turtles are a type of reptile. And on turtles, we call it a scute. So this is a sea turtle scute. And what's kind of cool is you can actually see there's also some leftover parts of barnacles. So that's another animal that grows on top of the sea turtle and gets a ride around the ocean. We call that fouling. Awesome. So we just wanted to show some artifacts of sea turtle since we're not going to show a live one. This is an example of what the loggerhead sea turtle would look like. And this is a turtle that is one of the more common ones here in Georgia. But now we're going to transition to land. So these would be all different types of terrestrial turtles that you might find here in Georgia. So I'll give you a minute to just make some observations. And if you want, you can add those to the chat box. So you might add color, any patterns, behavior or movement, maybe size. And if you have any questions, you can also add those to the chat box as well. Sita, did we have any questions or observations at this point?
Yeah, so one person observed that the turtle that you're on right now has a very bright coloration.
Yes, that is a fantastic observation. So this is an eastern box turtle, and that dappled coloration, those spots on the back, help it blend in with the maritime forest or a forest habitat. So as light is filtering through the leaves, it's going to show up as spots on the forest floor. So this helps the animal actually camouflage, even though it looks pretty bright to us right now. But while we're talking about color, and this might be a little hard to see on this device, but I'm going to try and get up a little bit closer. Notice the color of this particular turtle's eyes. And then in comparison, we'll look at, this is another eastern box turtle. But when we look at this one's eyes, what color do you see? You can add it to the chat box. It's the same color as its stripes on its head.
One person responded that they saw yellow and black.
Yes, so there are definitely yellow and black spots. And if you look really closely at the eye is actually an orange color. So this is only true for eastern box turtles, not for other turtle species, but they have more of an orange color, whereas for the females, they're going to have more of a brown color to the eyes. Any other questions or observations?
Yeah, one person noticed that the turtles seem to be moving a lot today, and that the larger turtle has more pronounced bumps on its shell.
Yes, those are all wonderful observations. So this is a larger turtle next to the box turtle. The box turtle is as large as it's going to get. It's full grown. This tortoise here is not actually full grown. So this is a Gopher tortoise. We got it in 2007. so it still may have some growing to do. And those bumps on its shell actually give us a clue that it spent most of its life in captivity. So we got them when they were pretty close to being hatchlings, whereas a wild gopher tortoise, oftentimes those bumps are worn smooth because they're digging underground. They're incredible diggers. They can actually dig burrows that are 40 feet long. It's a really long burrow. And if you look up close at their toenails, you can see that those would be really good for digging. And if we can get a close-up of its face, they actually blink from the bottom up to keep sand out of their eyes as they're digging. And there's been over 300 different species of animals observed using the gopher tortoise burrows. So not only are they really cool animals, but they also are really important in our ecosystems here because their burrows provide habitat or homes for lots and lots of other animals as well. Any last questions or observations about these terrestrial turtles?
Yeah, so one person asked whether the shell was brown.
It is. So on the gopher tortoise, the shell is pretty brown. There is, if we zoom in a little bit, there is some variation in color. It looks like it's got some lighter areas. But for the most part, very brown, which is in contrast to our eastern box turtles that have more yellow and black and orange and black and brown coloration. And one thing that you'll notice is different when we go to the aquatic turtles is look at the scales on their legs. So they've got, look really scaly. They've got toenails for digging and definitely legs for walking as opposed to swimming. Now, the last thing I wanted to show you with these particular turtles was a little bit of their snack time. So I know we're right before lunch, so you all might be getting hungry. And in just a minute, Epsita is going to lead us on an activity to make a gopher tortoise salad. But before you all learn how to make a gopher tortoise salad at home, I wanted to show you what it looks like here at the aquarium. So today is not a typical feeding day for the gopher tortoise. So this is not so much a meal, but more of a snack, smaller than her usual meal would be. But you can see that in this snack, we've added some lettuce, some hay, some cucumbers, and some blueberries. So you can see her there starting to eat. We'll see if we can get you a good shot of her eating away. They are herbivores. So that means they're only eating plants. They're not going to be eating meat or anything like that. So in the wild, she would be foraging for all different kinds of plants, berries, leaves.
We had one last question of what color eyes does the gopher tortoise have?
That is a great question. Let's see if we can get up close and let everyone make that observation. So I don't know if you can tell with the lighting, but they are a very dark brown. You might be able to see a little better shot here too of her eating. You can see that she has a well-adapted mouth to eat all kinds of veggies. She is enjoying her salad snack. And we do sometimes switch up the way that we feed the salad to her. So if you're interested in that, I encourage you to go back to our YouTube page, the UGA Marine Extension and Georgia Sea Grant YouTube page, and see our archived video of a public program all about animal enrichment, in which one of the marine education fellows shows you how she hung up pieces of the salad on a ladder for the turtle to have to move along and really work to get the food. But with that, we'll let the tortoise enjoy the salad and turn it over to Epsita to get us started on how you might make a similar snack at home.
Thank you so much, Kayla. So, like Kayla said, we saw the gopher tortoise eating some snacks, and now we are going to make a salad just like a gopher tortoise would eat. So let's put on our Aquarist caps and let's make these snacks. So gopher tortoises eat many things, including lettuce, squash, and bananas. They are herbivores, and so they'll mainly eat greens, some vegetables, and then the occasional fruit. So what I have here is some kale and some leaf pieces, some squash, a bit of carrot, and then some blueberries. And if you would like to follow along, there is a craft sheet on the website where you registered. So now imagine that you were going to feed the gopher tortoise, but you wanted to make the snack interesting. So what recipes can you think of? Let's make a plate for the gopher tortoise. So what I'm going to choose is I'm going to choose a piece of carrot and a piece of squash to put in here. The ratio that you'd want for this is approximately 8 leaves. I've cut up the leaves with 2 pieces of vegetables in there. You don't have to cut up the vegetables, but you can. It'll make it easier for the gopher tortoise to eat. And then occasionally you will put fruit in with their diet. So I'm putting a couple of pieces of fruit. At the aquarium, we also like to give our animals enrichment to bring out natural behaviors. So in what ways can you rearrange this plate to bring out those behaviors? Some people might say that separating them could be interesting. So what if I took out each piece again and gave each bowl to the gopher tortoise, see which one it went to? Other people might say, well, let's try to hide some of these vegetable pieces, so they have to find them within the greens. And all of those answers are amazing. Both ideas are good and definitely things to experiment with. And now that you've made the snack, you'll realize it's all things a human can eat too. So now imagine that you're a gopher tortoise and you want to try and eat it. And if you want an extra challenge because you're just that good, you can use your neck and face, but no arms. So at this time, I'm going to hand it back over to Kayla for some of our aquatic animals.
Thank you, Ipsita. So now we are transitioning to some turtles that would be living in a more water environment. So take a close look at this one's legs and maybe add in the chat box some observations you're making about this animal's body or its behavior that might help it thrive in a water environment. This is called a Diamondback Terrapin. This particular turtle is named Pumpkin, and she's very curious about the camera. Diamondback terrapins are one of the only species in North America that spend their entire life cycle in brackish water. So that means where freshwater and saltwater are mixing together. Here on the Georgia coast, we have a lot of brackish water in our estuaries, salt marshes, tidal creeks. Ipsita, did we have some questions or observations?
Yeah, so one person noticed that the toes are webbed, and another person noticed the coloration around the lips.
Yes, those are both fantastic observations. So the webbed feet is really common. It's a common adaptation in aquatic turtles. And as you can see, it helps her swim around as opposed to walking. And then that white coloration around the lips is actually a really distinctive marking for Diamondback terrapins. One of the cool things about this species is each individual animal might have a different pattern on its shell, but they all have that, what looks like white lipstick on the beak. So that white coloring right around the mouth. And if we look close, you can actually see her 2 nostrils there in the front too. As Ipsita said before, turtles have lungs, and so you might see her come up to the surface to breathe. Any other questions or observations about the terrapin before we move on?
Yeah, so one person asked whether the shell had bumps, and then another person noticed how small the feet were in comparison to the terrestrial turtles.
Yes, that's a really great observation about the feet, and really has to do with the difference between a turtle that swims compared to one that's going to be digging. The shell has some bumps. It's not as large of a bumps as, say, a juvenile loggerhead sea turtle has. It doesn't have huge ridges, but it does have some texture to the shell. Oh, and this is a great shot right now as she's swimming of her plastron. That bottom part of her shell is called the plastron. The part that you probably were asking about with the bumps on the top here is called the carapace. So 2 different parts of the shell, but again, that is all part of the animal's body. And if anyone on the line has been to a beach here in Georgia, so like Tybee Island or Jekyll Island, you might have seen as you're driving out to the beach signs to drive slowly or turtle crossing, and that's for this species. So terrapins will come up on land out of the marsh to lay their eggs. So especially in the spring and summer, it's important to drive slowly and follow the speed limit so that we can help ensure that more of these turtles make it safely to where they're laying their eggs. Wonderful. Well, we could spend all day watching Pumpkin, and she is just as curious about all of you. She's really interested in this camera. But we're going to move on so we have enough time. This is more of our behind the scenes area with the turtles. Some of the turtles that you just saw before are back in their enclosure. And here's another aquatic turtle. Anyone have a guess what the name of this turtle is? And I'll give you a hint that it has to do with the markings on its back, on its shell. And we'll see if we can get a little closer view of it as well. Let's see, did we have any guesses for names of this turtle?
We did not have any guesses for names for the turtle, but we're excited to learn.
Wonderful, and maybe it's a new species for some folks. So if this is the first time you've seen it, they are really cool animals. This is called a spotted turtle. And unlike the terrapin, which is mostly going to be in brackish water, this is a turtle that you would find in freshwater habitats. You might notice compared to the terrestrial turtles that the shell is slightly less domed. That helps it swim through the water easier, a little more hydrodynamic. It still has some really interesting coloration. And if the camera will come and focus there, you can see the nostrils on the mouth where, again, it still comes up to the surface to breathe. You might be noticing the behavior where it's tucked into its shell. That helps it protect itself from predators. So a definite benefit of having a shell if you're a turtle is that extra protection that you can tuck into your shell if you're worried that something might eat you or you're not quite sure if it's dangerous. But you can see that this turtle is getting more comfortable now, starting to come out a little bit more of its shell.
So one person was wondering, how long can turtles hold their breath for?
That is a great question. So it really depends on the species and their activity level. So some turtle species, like sea turtles, when they're resting, will actually slow down some of their functions so that they can stay under for a little bit longer. And how are we doing on time at CETA? Do we have time to see the chicken turtle?
We do have time to see the chicken turtle. We have about 5 more minutes.
Wonderful. Well, you all are in for a treat because this is one of my favorite turtles here. Just because she has some really interesting behavior. She's got a super long neck, so sometimes she will hang out on the bottom of the tank and just stretch up her neck to get air at the surface. So this is another example of an aquatic turtle. Again, fresh water. You can see that slightly less domed shell, the webbed feet. Does anyone have any questions, observations, things that you want to know more about? There's that long neck extension. Any questions from the audience?
We had an observation as to how the underside of the turtle was lighter than the top.
Yes, that's a great observation. So that's called counter shading. So if you can imagine that there was a predator looking at this animal from above, that dark shell is going to help it blend in with the bottom, particularly if they're in muddy habitats. And then if there was a predator looking at it from below, that yellow coloration would blend in with the lighter water where the sunlight is coming in at the surface. So they're great observations all the way around. There she goes to breathe. You can see her head at the surface. And I think we are just about out of time. And so I think as we do our wrap up, we'll just check back in to see if our Gopher tortoise has finished its snack. And I will turn it back over to Ipsita to give you any last information before we tune off.
We have a few more questions and a bit more time to do questions if you would like to take some, Kayla.
Absolutely.
All right, so for the chicken turtle, someone asked if it had spots and stripes on it.
That is a great question. So I think it mostly has stripes on it, and that's called disruptive coloration. It kind of helps break up the animal's body so that it blends in more with the background. It's harder for a predator, to see its full shape. It kind of makes it look like maybe shadows in the water. I don't think it has spots, but we can go back and look at its shell, make some observations as a group. So you can see on the scoots, it's got some patterns. So that's mostly just the individual scales. I'm not seeing any spots, but is anyone in the audience seeing spots on it? It does have some spots on the bottom of the plastron. One way that you can tell a chicken turtle apart from a yellow-bellied slider, which is another common aquatic freshwater turtle here in Georgia, is that yellow-bellied sliders on that front plastron, see how it's just yellow on her? So on a yellow-bellied slider, there'd be two big black dots right there in between the legs on that front half of the plastron, that bottom part of the shell. Good questions.
We had another question as to how long can the chicken turtle stretch their necks?
That is a great question. We'll have to get back to you on that one.
And then lastly, what's your favorite turtle, Kayla?
Oh, it's hard to pick just one. I really like soft shell turtles. They look like a pancake. They've got a really flat shell, and their mouth looks a little bit like a snorkel. And you can typically find them in river habitats. And there's a number of different species of soft shells, but I like that group as a whole.
And then we have one person asking whether all turtles have tails.
That is a great question. As far as I know, they do, but there's always exceptions in nature. So that'd be a good question to do some research on as well if you're continuing to be curious about it.
And then finally, our last question, are all these different turtles friends?
Well, that's a great question. So some of them, like the box turtles, we'll come back over to the box turtle enclosure. So in addition to the two eastern box turtles that you met earlier, they also share their enclosure with a Florida box turtle, and the gopher tortoise also lives in this one. So these animals are all kind of sharing a space and interacting with each other. And our spotted turtles, there's a few spotted turtles in the tank together, but many of the other ones, they don't have other turtles in their enclosure, in part because they'd be in different habitats in the wild. So I don't know if they would get along if they were put in the same place, but they aren't usually in the same place to interact.
All right, thank you so much. So that looks like it's all the time we have for questions, and I'm going to go ahead and wrap up. If you had fun today, then I hope you will consider joining us tomorrow at 12 p.m. for Sharks and Rays 101, or next Tuesday at 11 a.m. for Skull Puzzles. In addition, every Thursday at 2 p.m., we have this virtual series with next week titled Feeling Crabby. This is the first summer that we have done virtual programs, and your feedback is incredibly valuable for shaping what these programs look like moving forward. Please take 1 minute to fill out the survey in the chat box. The chat box will disappear when we end the meeting, so go ahead and click that link now or copy and paste into a new window so that you have it for after the meeting. I do want to give a big thank you to this time for any friends in the audience, as your donations and support help us offer educational programming this summer. And if anyone is interested in becoming a friend, the application is on our website. You can also stay connected with us after the program by attending other public programs, following us on social media, or learning about our volunteer and internship opportunities. Thank you for joining us, and see you next week.